So now a little bit about our speaker that's coming up next. Reverend Jamar A. Boyd II serves as the 17th pastor of the Kenwood United Church of Christ in Chicago, Illinois, and concurrently as the Associate Office of the President at the John D. Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. His academic foundation includes a Bachelor's of Science in Sports Management and Business from Georgia Southern University, and a Master's of Divinity from the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University. Reverend Boyd is also a graduate fellow of the Gift Collaborative of Black Theological Education and Black Faith Traditions, and a fellow of the Religion and Society Collective of the Aspen Institute. Before his current roles, Reverend Boyd was a senior manager of organizational impact for the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, Incorporated, contributing to the organizational strategy for engaging African American clergy and emerging leaders in racial justice. He also holds a position as both a justice reform organizer and an economic justice organizer at the Virginia Interfaith Center for the Public Policy. Please welcome tonight's speaker, Reverend Jamar Boyd.
All right, I got to make myself comfortable. So look at somebody and say, it's good to see you. Come on, some of y'all looking at me. Look at the person next to you and say, it's good to see you. All right. It's good to see you too, thank you. I don't see Valaida. She was standing upstairs. There she is. Can we give her a round of applause? Thank you. Thank you for this invitation, and will do my very, very best to do some storytelling tonight. Our theme tonight, the enduring legacy of Black philanthropy, the power of our stories, and the genius of community to heal, repair, and transform, is the central focus of the words that I will share with you. For me, Black philanthropy is not limited to the conventional Western understanding of taking, repurposing, redistributing, and refining history to make it fit into a motif absent of faith and truth. Instead, Black philanthropy contains stories of community, commitment, and culture that transcend normative understandings of giving and storytelling. For me, it was personified and witnessed within the Black church, Barnettsville Baptist Church, First Freedom Missionary Baptist Church, Liberty Hill Missionary Baptist Church, Mount Hermon Missionary Baptist Church, Mount Lisbon Presbyterian Church, and Mount Nebo Missionary Baptist Church. These are not random churches. They are the sacred spaces in which my family founded in South Carolina. These are spaces of my family's origins of commitment to the spiritual and holistic well-being of Black folks in the PD and Low Country regions of South Carolina. And more importantly, this is where I witnessed firsthand the powerful and enduring legacy of Black rural philanthropy. And I began to think about the role of Black churches not merely as spaces of gathering on Sunday morning and Wednesday evening, but spaces that are intermediaries between their communities and other sectors. That's Black culture. That is Black creativity. That is what Black spaces are. We are not new to philanthropy. Arguably, we are the best at philanthropy. And Black philanthropy has sought to refine the very meaning of the practice to ensure daily that resurrection, say resurrection, to ensure daily that resurrection occurs in the life of those that are often discarded at the margins. Yet for me, I see philanthropy through the lens of Black faith, but I also see it through Black ingenuity that is a source of inspiration, Black collective organizing that is a means of resistance. At its core, philanthropy is supposed to be goodwill to fellow members of the human race, and that is what Black communal existence as a whole is in a nutshell. It is a common commitment that contains stories of persistence, perseverance, and promise, not confined to whiteness, confronting the notion of invisibility. So let's talk about this notion of invisibility. Released in 2021, Black art in the absence of light is a cinematic beauty that if you haven't seen, I hope you will take some time to watch it. It is a cinematic beauty that focuses on the intentionality of Dr. David Driscoll through his carefully crafted showcase, 2 centuries of black art. Driscoll's commitment to curating the masterpieces of black artists, 200 years worth of black creatives in painting, architecture, decorative arts, and drawings, is furthermore described and defined by the film's director, Sam Pollard, as he says, to flex black art in the absence of light into a memorialization of 2 centuries while investigating the present landscape in art and in the world for African American artists. More importantly, the film showcases the presence, impact, and work of black artists such as Elizabeth Catlett and Emma Amos to Faith Ringgold and Kerry James Marshall, encapsulating variety, skill, and perspective existent within the conscious, spiritual, and physical artistry of black genius. This film, for me, is one of consciousness. And Robert Daniels writes in the Guardian article with Sam Pollard, in some ways, the documentary is not only a celebration of how far black art exhibitions have come since Driscoll's 2 centuries, it also is an insurance policy in case this inclusive environment doesn't stabilize, in case the wider world retracts into the familiar pattern of exclusion. Say exclusion. Arguably, I'm about to talk to y'all like I'm at church. Arguably, beloveds, this is what it means to be in plain sight but missed by people around you. Consider the words of Daniels again. The documentary is also an insurance policy in case this quote unquote inclusive environment doesn't stabilize, in case the wider world retracts into the familiar pattern of exclusion. So whether you're a black artist, a mother, a child, or an elder, we often tend to miss those in plain sight due to an inability to reject patterns of exclusion, resulting in the ever-present tension of asking the resounding and revolving door question, Lord, what are you showing me here? Why do you have me in these spaces with these people who fail to see who I am, although I'm right in front of them? Yet for me, I began to ask a different kind of question. Lord, could it be that I can find you, although they don't see me? It's as though we endure, and experience a page from Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. Ralph Ellison states in Invisible Man, I am invisible. I understand simply because people refuse to see me. Like the bodiless heads you see sometimes in circus shows, it's as though I have been surrounded by mirrors of hard, distorting glass. When they approach me, they see only my surroundings, themselves, or figments of their imagination. Indeed, everything and anything except me. This reminds me of a text within the sacred canon of Christian scripture nestled in Luke chapter 13. There you'll find Cleopas and another were traveling a 7-mile journey from Emmaus to Jerusalem. One that should have been an acknowledgement of the magnitude of God's presence, yet it was missed in plain sight. Like an invisible man, Jesus joined them, but due to the terror, trauma, and trouble of the day, they seemingly looked upon him as Ellison had wrote. Don't get distracted by the rain, it's just the ancestors joining us tonight. Put your focus back over here. When they approach me, Ellison writes, they see only my surroundings, themselves, or figments of their imagination. Indeed, everything and anything except me. Arguably, that's possibly how Jesus felt in Luke chapter 13. It revealed the reality of trouble or tension that reveals a correlation as they struggle or refuse to see him in plain sight. And arguably, it's the same reason that we're gathered here tonight. Folks fail to see us in plain sight. Therefore, black philanthropy becomes the necessary engine to communal viability. So let's talk about this enduring legacy of black philanthropy. The notion of invisibility is not uncommon. It's not unknown or unrecognizable to or within our individual and collective existences as black and brown folks in this country and the broader diaspora. Because doing this work as black beings is an art within itself. It is an art that consistently intersects our double consciousness. Say double consciousness. Our double consciousness of being American and being a Negro. Du Bois writes that two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals, and one dark body. You don't have to be honest with me, but be honest with yourself when you go home. You are living in a state of double consciousness. But that's why uplifting the words of Ralph Ellison from Invisible Man is essential to tonight's message. Published in 1952, Invisible Man accounts personal sacrifice and the drive to overcome one of the great American challenges. In the novel, the protagonist is simply called narrator. It is a black man who lives his life as a model citizen. He does it right. He does it by the book, plays by rules he didn't create and rules that do not consider him as human. He continuously tries to uplift himself and his community, but at every turn, he comes up against a gauntlet of discrimination that leads to his ultimate and tragic end. And beloved, you see what's happening in 2025. It's almost as though Invisible Man is being lived out every single day. And within this book, the resounding fact of a gauntlet of discrimination remains the thread that ties us to the words of Ellison in 1952 and reminds us that this world will always, unless it's held unto a level of consciousness that considers all forms of human existence, it will always return to a pattern of exclusion. But that's why our confrontation and our truth-telling is necessary. Dr. Jackie Bouvier Copeland, when highlighting the African concept of Ubuntu, states, black philanthropy emerged and existed for millennia before black people even set foot in America. And that's important to recognize because it is a form of culture, a socio-economic structure that emerged throughout Africa's. There were certain African orientations that survived the transatlantic slave trade and became the backbone, the conceptual and structural framework for what we call black American philanthropy. That concept of Ubuntu, say that with me, Ubuntu, was retained in the United States, and we just call it collective giving today. But there is a greater whole history, including our ancestors, and a future that transcends all of us as individuals, and we have a responsibility to pay it forward, end quote. Children of God, evidence is this fact, that black folks give not as a tax write-off. Clap your hands right there, amen. Black folks do not give as a mere tax write-off. Black folk give because it is what's necessary for the community to survive. It is what's necessary for children to strive. And it is what's necessary for black elders to live. Black folks give for the sake of transformation. From church to fraternities and sororities to giving circles to scholarships and various ways of endowing arts, culture, and education, black folks have an enduring legacy of black philanthropy that interrogates the status quo. And it is one that remembers disposable commodities within the American and global empires. It remembers who politicians write off, although they say they are elected to serve the people. It remembers family members that we forget when we move on up a little bit in the tax bracket. It remembers those who remain as other, even to us in this room tonight, because of an inability to see them. And beloved, I am concerned that in this moment, if we don't really re-engage the legacy of black philanthropy, we ourselves will fall back into a pattern of exclusion and do whiteness better than whiteness itself. So it requires us to do a little bit of a Sankofa moment, to do some remembering that is relevant for today, that we do not repeat some harmful practices in the future. Some of you are wondering, all right, you mentioned this reference in Luke chapter 13. What was it all about? But within verses 28 through 32 of that same chapter, Cleopas and his walking partner, some would argue that it's his wife, others would say it's an unknown individual. Cleopas and this walking partner have been communing and conversing with Jesus for 17 verses. They've set forth on the journey to Emmaus from Jerusalem. Jesus meets them along the way, interrupts their conversation to inquire upon the discussion, and Cleopas divulges into the matter of crucifixion. Cleopas shares the facts surrounding resurrection that are overshadowed by disbelief and doubt, and then receives instructions coupled with rebuke by the Lord, but doesn't even know who he's talking to. That's some of us doing our work. That's some of us living in communities and not knowing our neighbors. That's some of us living and failing to see the very people who are in front of us. Cleopas is talking to Jesus and has no clue who he's talking to. And in the midst of his disbelief and his doubt and talking about resurrection and crucifixion, he receives instructions coupled with rebuke by the Lord. And when he receives the rebuke, that's when he says, wait a second. I'm not just talking to an average man. I'm talking to that black brother who was resurrected. And if he could be resurrected, so can I. Beloved, that's the beauty of black philanthropy. Black philanthropy is understanding we see the visible where other folks see the invisible. We see resurrection where other folks see death. And we see life where it has been prohibited by the very forces of this world. Think about it, Madam C.J. Walker, Georgia Gilmore, John H. Johnson, A.G. Gaston, Bridget Biddy Mason, to Stephanie Bell Rose, Valaida Fullwood, and my own great-great-grandparents, John and Rosa Chisholm, on Highway 21 in Yamasee, South Carolina. They saw what other people could not see. They enabled resurrection where they had been deaf, and they ensured life continued despite the distractions in the way. I'll leave you with this. We know that resurrection is possible, but the question is, will you do the work to bring about resurrection? Do you remember the introduction when I mentioned the film Black Art in the Absence of Light? Then I raised the words of Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, where he states, I am invisible. Understand simply because people refuse to see me. When they approach me, they see only my surroundings. Themselves are figments of their imaginations. Indeed, everything and anything except me. We talked about Luke 13. And in Luke 13, Jesus moves from being an invisible man to the very visible presence and possibility of what happens when we just pause for a moment, remember who we are, and consider what's possible and heed the words of the divine. And that is what each of you are charged with, myself included in this room. I'm not just a pastor. I know what foundation I work for and whose office I work in. Nobody has to remind me of that. I bring my full self into that space. And I hope you're doing the very same thing that you're doing. Stop practicing bad patterns. Never surrender yourself at the door. Never capitulate for access. And please don't sell out for proximity. Because here's the reality. You're black for a reason. And that's the grace of God. And it is that grace that enabled them in the text and enables us today to engage in communication, community, and communion with people who were often written off and seen as invisible. And that's the challenge, the charge, and the courage required in a time like this that becomes good news about life in this world. And while we may miss some things because we're human, God never does. And you're in these positions to see the impossible, to create the unimaginable, to solve what seems inconceivable and impossible. And Black philanthropy, since its beginning, has ensured that we have something to eat that not only nourishes our bodies but revives our souls with burning. We are graced to hold positions and power and proximity, not to create further invisibility. I don't know how much I can drive that point tonight. But it really is to uncover the hidden things that Blackness may be resurrected to its fullest potential and glory. That is the genius of community, to heal, repair, and transform. Community does not happen in isolation. Community does not mimic oppressive tactics. Community does not revile and rejoice in violence. But community sees what others deem as invisible. Listen to the babies. Consider the welfare of the children. Don't discard the elders, and pursue your wildest passions and your dreams, because maybe a better way of saying it is this: you better see with your good eye what other folks can't see with two eyes. I'm going to give credit to Queenie Boy. That's my grandmama on that one right there. But here's my last little tidbit for you. The enduring legacy of Black philanthropy is found in the power of our stories, the genius of community, and the willingness to transform for the sake of igniting, sustaining, and revealing something anew in a world in constant chaos. Thank you.